And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to do is we're going to be finishing off the second part of adding a shooting uh, object to this. So then that way this statue not only chases us and roams, but also shoots projectiles at us as well. So let's go ahead and push play, and let's see what this looks like. Okay, so the character is doing its roaming thing. It moves around, stops, moves around, stops. Now if it sees us, it will start to throw projectiles at us from, let's see if we can, from the left hand side there. So I'm walking backwards so that way I can actually, let's see, oops. Okay, so I'm in a corner now. Okay, so basically to create that effect, we're going to continue working with the enemy, the roaming, chasing enemy that we were working with earlier. So let's go back to that folder. Let's go to A enemy, and this is going to be in shooting move enemy. And there is our shooting move enemy. So let's go ahead and open them up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this one from the floor because that's the one that's doing everything. Okay, so now that we're in that folder and we don't have anything out on the floor, I am going to go to Content, First Person BP, Blueprint, and you'll see there something that's called First Person Projectile. If we double click and open that up, basically this is all the code that we need to make the projectile work for the ball itself, for the sphere. So we're going to make the sphere generate hits. It's going to have physics that's been added to it, and essentially all we want to do is copy this. So let me go ahead and close that. So again, this is Content First Person BP Blueprint. We're going to right click on this, and we're going to say we can actually just find the folder that we want it to go to, which is, there it is, shooting moving enemy. I'm going to grab this, drag it over there. Now what I want to do is not move because I don't want to take it away from my first person character. What I want to do is I want to hit copy. So then that way I'll have the original one here. And now if I go to shooting moving enemy, I'll have one there. Now the big thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and rename this. We don't want it to be first person projectile anymore, because if it is, then it's the same name as the one that's down there, and that's going to create problems for us later if we decide to make code changes. Now the other thing also too is that later we're going to be adding health and damage to these things. So if this thing is called first person projectile and our projectile is also called first person projectile, then we're going to have a problem with it feeding back damage to us from stuff that bounces off of, let's say, a wall, as opposed to the one that's coming from the enemy itself. So for many different reasons, let's go ahead and rename this. Okay, I'm going to leave the word projectile there so that I know that the round ball itself is the projectile. I'm going to call this SMR, so shoot, move, roam, underscore, and I'm going to leave the word projectile there. So now that has its own name, and if we double click on it, we'll see that it has exactly the same settings as the other one, except for now a different name. Okay. So that's all we need to do with the projectile. Now we need to get the projectile to do a couple of things. First, we obviously need to generate them. So remember that these things they don't exist in the world. They get shot out of the gun, or they get, in this case, they're being shot out of the hand, but they have to be generated. So just like we did with our explosions, where we set up a blueprint to come in and create the explosion when somebody runs into the mine. Well, here we're going to have to create a blueprint that, or inside the blueprint, we're going to have to generate this ball. So to do that, let's go ahead and double click into our enemy. Okay. And what you should see in there right now is the code that we wrote in before, all the way up to the event tick, this one, which is switching it back and forth between the chase event and the roaming event. So what we need to do now is, off of the chase, we need to click and drag out. And actually, before we do this, there's a couple of things that we need to generate. There's going to be two components, And let's go ahead and add all the stuff that we need to in the components panel. So there's going to be two variables that we're going to need to create, and we're going to have to add a scene component, a sphere, and I believe those are the two things. So let's go ahead and do that with our character. So the first thing we need to do is add a sphere component. So let's add component. Oh, this is going to be a scene component. So type in the word scene, and you'll see there underneath utility something that says the word scene, and it looks like a big ball and a little ball. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to go ahead and call this, you know what? I forget. Spawn projectile location. So spawn projectile location. This is the third one that I'm making, so I'm going to go ahead and call this 3 so I don't have issues later. So now that we have that, the next thing that we need to add is going to be a... Okay, so that's it. So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and add that sphere location to the mesh. So let's grab that and drag it into the scene. Oh, we click on it, it's already there. Sorry, we don't drag it in, it's been added. So this ball right here is actually what we're going to tie into the thing that's going to be shooting, or where the projectiles are going to be launching from or being spawned from. So spawn projectile location. Okay, so all I'm going to do is tidy this up and make sure that it feels like it's coming from the hand. Okay, so that'll be the spawn projectile location. All right, so let's go ahead and hit compile and save, and then the rest of this is going to actually be in the code. So let's go to event graph, and let's go ahead and create the two variables that we're going to need. So the first variable is going to be spawn projectile location. So let's add a variable. Let's call this spawn projectile. Okay, and then the next one is going to be the shoot amount. So let's go ahead and add and type in shoot amount. Okay, now the first one can stay a Boolean because it's going to be giving us back a positive for this, but this one actually is going to need to switch the variable type, and we're going to switch this to float because it's going to be a number. So we're going to generate a number. This is going to be the number of bullets that it has to shoot every time it generates a shot, and this is where it's going to be coming in from. So next thing we need to do is create a branch condition. So let's go and click out of the chase and type in if for branch. And remember, let's see where this is actually coming from. Okay, so this is on the event tick bind pawn C from chase event. So this piece of the code right here, this is where we're going to click off and drag that. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to add the projectile location to the Boolean. So we're going to say get, and we're going to tie that into the condition. So this is going to be giving us a constant yes for this variable. And the other thing you also want to do is make sure that this is actually giving us a default value of yes. So again, we're going to need to compile, and now you'll see that that variable has the default value, and we're going to click yes. So this is going to ensure that the state of this branch is always yes. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is create a spawn actor. So let's click off of true and type in spawn actor, okay, from class. And inside the class folder, what we want to do is find our projectile. So if you click under class and you type in, I believe it's projectile, you'll see that we have, and this is why we needed to give them all individual names later, because when we assign it to this, when this thing spawns, it could spawn my first person projectile, it could spawn someone from another shooting enemy's projectile, and so I believe that we called this one Let's actually go back and check. And we called it SMR projectile. So that's actually the one, in my case, that I would be looking for. You would be putting in the one that you typed in. So let me type in SMR, because that should take me right to that projectile. So now what we're saying is, if the branch condition is true, generate this projectile. Now we need to have a location for this projectile. Where is it going to be projecting from? And that should be the spawn location, but that doesn't work. So let's figure out why. Okay, so we need to get world transform. We need to figure out where that is in the world. So let's type in get world. And if we already have it in the components list, you'll see that it'll come in with it attached. So this is for each one of the components that are there, and the one that we would be looking for would be spawn location number 3. Okay, so let me just make that look a little cleaner. Okay, so from here we have it being generated. The next thing that we're going to need to do to this is create an impulse event. So then that way every time this shoots, it's going to cause our statue to move a little bit, or to create an impulse event. So we get this with the animation. Now you also will have to have an animation that makes this work. All right. So let's go ahead and create one of these. So off of the execute, we're going to type in impulse, add impulse. Okay, and this is going to be to the cube, which is going to be the actor, which is where we have the mesh loaded. Remember that we have the static mesh inside the cube, so that's what we want it to react with. From there, we want the impulse event to come from where the cube is. We want to make sure that it's always pointing forward, so then that way when it shoots forward. So what we'll need to do is, off of impulse, we'll need to create a vector times vector. So let's click off of this and let's type in vector times. So vector asterisk will also get you there. So vector times vector, and that will give us 2 location points. Now from those location points, one of them is going to be the front of the cube, which direction is the cube coming from, and then the other one is going to be the amount that we have to shoot. So let's go to get forward vector, and we want that to be from the cube, so it's pointing in front of the character, and that's where it's going to generate it. Okay, and the second one is going to be coming off of the shoot amount, which is a number. So let's go into shoot amount. Let's put that here. We need to get a get, and then we're going to connect this to the vector, and it should automatically translate that for us. So it turns it from a value of 100 to and actually we need to put that value in. So if we click on shoot amount, since we've already done the compile, we actually get the amount there, and I always type in 100. All right, so then we have 100 bullets to shoot, or the statue, I guess, has 100 bullets to shoot. Okay. So the last part of this is going to be to get it to go back into a loop, so then that way it keeps shooting after itself. So we're going to grab, again, the spawn projection location. We're going to drag that out, and we need to create a set instance of. So when it finishes, it repeats the event again. We're going to put a delay. Okay, now this delay is important because it actually is the amount of time between one shooting event and the next shooting event. So if you have a semi-automatic, if you have an automatic rifle, this number is going to be very, very small. So the person hits the button once, and it just, the faster that they can click, the faster that the event will happen. Now, if you want it to be, let's say, take less time, and really a good number is somewhere between 2 and 5, depending on how difficult the enemy is and how many bullets you want, or how much each one of those, like if I've only got 100 points, and each one of these things, each one of the projectiles takes, let's say, 10 points, and I'm shooting these things at a rate of 1 per second, it's going to take 10 seconds before my character's dead, right? So you have to think about the numbers. You have to think about how often you want this thing to shoot based off of how much each one of those bullets are going to affect your character and how quickly it's going to take you out of the game. So I say two to three for 2 to 5 seconds of duration time should be okay. And then we're going to set another one of these, so then that way it knows to create another one of these events. So we'll set that. We'll get that to come back to the bottom. Now the only other thing is you need to make sure that projectile is checked. So then that way it'll give us, it'll make sure that that actually works the way we need it to. Okay, so at this point we should have everything that we need. We have the shooting enemy now has the ability to be able to spawn a projectile, get where the location of the little the scene component that we added to our player. Remember that we located that scene component in the hand, so then that way it looks like the ball is shooting from there. If we wanted it to be in the other hand, we would do this. If we wanted to look like it was coming from the middle, we would shoot. We would have it shoot there. I just think the hand is an interesting place. Remember that it doesn't have to be balls. These things could eventually be. It could be an emitter that sends out, let's say, like. A flamethrower or something like that. This is just the point where it's going to be taking place from. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit compile and save, and let's put our character out on the floor and see if this works now. Okay, so let's drag a version of that out. Let's place them, and for some reason, okay, nope, there it is. They're on the mesh, so let's go ahead and push play. And we see that they are indeed still following the roaming. Let's see if they will interact with us. They do, and they were shooting at us. I saw it at least project once, trying to see if it's not my... See if I can get away from this thing. Okay, so it shot once, but it never did end up shooting again. So we need to go back and see what we messed up on and figure out why it only shot once as opposed to shooting multiple times. Okay, so there was really nothing wrong with the code that I had written. All the code was working correctly. Obviously, it was creating the first projectile. The problem was with the pawn sensing cone itself. So what I did was I went back into my shooting enemy. I went back into the viewport, and you see how I have it now to where it's more flat and it's catching all of us. What was happening before was that the character or the first-person player was ending up here, and this thing was so narrow that it was pushing me, and I wasn't actually triggering it to shoot the projectiles. And since I was so close to it, that's the other thing we could also do, is maybe move this guy back a little bit, and then we also would have to then add this and put that back a little bit. Okay, and what that'll do is it'll give a little bit more space. The other thing you could also do is go to float. Okay, so what I did was pawn sensing. I took this to 75, so I didn't go full 90 with it, just to have it a little bit more like it's in front of the thing. So then that way, you know, it just does a better job of picking it up. And the other thing I did was, I believe it was, oh yeah, in the event graph, I went back to on the chase. I put the acceptance radiance to 10, and it was 5 before, so it was getting even closer to you. So maybe we put the acceptance radius at 20. And this will put a little bit more distance between you and the character as far as what it considers it to be a chase. And let's hit compile and save. And the other thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a null box because what we want to do is we want to move away from it and see that it's still shooting at us. So I'm going to go to volumes and let's grab a null modifier and let me just expand that out a bit. Oops, we're only getting 2 of the 3 sides. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go get this guy's attention and then run back here, and hopefully it will still be shooting at me, and then we'll be able to walk far enough away from it to see once we get its attention. Oh, come on. There we go. You can see that it's definitely at a further distance from me, and as long as I'm in the range of the cone, it continues to keep shooting at me. Okay, so there we go. So now we have an enemy that is shooting at us that has the ability to be able to roam and also chase us. Now from here, it's playing around with the settings, seeing what makes sense for you. Maybe you want to increase the number of bullets that it has, or you want to increase the speed at which they are generated. That's totally up to you. Play around with it, see what works best for the game that you're working in. But as far as the mechanics and how to get it to work, that's the code right there. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the video and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.